Saitama ruined One Punch Man. Now, before you hit the dislike button and dip out of here, I feel like I need to explain the real purpose of this video better than my title could. See, today I'll be playing devil's advocate on both sides of probably the most heavily debated chapter amongst One Punch Man fans, and towards the end of the video, explain how I would fix it in a way that I think would leave most people happy. See, there's a moment in the manga that was so controversial at the time that it left even the most die-hard fans calling shenanigans on the entire series and denouncing it as a whole. It was a moment that came at the climax of one of the most anticipated arcs of 2022 and the culmination of many years of buildup. If you haven't guessed what I'm referring to yet, I'm talking about the time travel sequence at the very end of Saitama vs. Garo. This came after Garo had irreversibly ruined the planet Earth with the cosmic radiation from his new god avatar form. Saitama then makes it to the scene far too late when he realizes that pretty much everyone is dead, and in a fit of genuine rage starts one of the most epic fights One Punch Man will ever see. Garo pushes Saitama to new heights where he reveals insane new serious moves and the true potential of his power. As with every Saitama fight in the series though, he eventually delivers a final blow that brings both he and Garo colliding back to Earth where the fight had began, finally stopping the otherwise unstoppable force that Garo had become. After realizing the error of his ways, while also realizing that he'd done irreversible damage that pretty much left everyone in the series dead, Garo tries to undo everything and literally teaches Saitama how to time travel on the spot. He then goes back to the moment that Garo first began his rampage as an avatar of God and puts him down before everything starts going down the toilet. Some people argue that this scene was pretty much a big FU to all the buildup and development that led to that moment. I mean, this made it to where all the crazy shit that happened for the past like 10 or so chapters didn't matter at all because it literally never happened. The death of a ton of core characters, the insane battle on the moon Io, the serious fart, nothing, all of it never happened. Also, just as importantly in my opinion, all the crucial development for both Garo and Saitama's character never happened either. See, in the new timeline that didn't get completely wrecked by Garo's radiation, no one other than Genos has any real recollection of what happened in the destroyed timeline. Genos tries revealing this information to the Hero Association, but of course it falls on deaf ears for the most part. Saitama never got to experience what he admitted was the fight he'd always been looking for. Garo never got to truly witness the consequences that becoming the absolute evil would bring. Instead, Saitama just rips a hole in his pants and Garo gets the shit beat out of him by some guys in tank tops before escaping. The whole thing just felt like an unsatisfying ending to an otherwise epic arc. No one walked away technically learning anything from the whole experience because it, never happened. But that's not even the biggest issue with this whole time travel thing. See, to me, the biggest issue time travel brought to the story wasn't the undoing of its own climax, it was actually the fact that time travel is now a canonical thing that's confirmed to be possible in One Punch Man, which just sets up a ton of potential plot holes for the story. Now, your stance on time travel being used as a plot device in a story will heavily dictate whether or not you agree with me on this point, but one thing that I think we all can agree on is that at the very least, it always brings a lot of future and past events into question. Like for starters, how did Saitama even learn how to time travel in a matter of seconds? All Garo asked him to do was take a certain stance and mimic his technique, which was pretty much just to stand there. Do you really expect me to believe that Saitama, a guy that just went through a whole tournament arc proving he doesn't know a damn about martial arts, can just suddenly have the level of technique copying greater than a fighting prodigy like Garo? No shot. On top of that, if you consider the fact that this was a small taste of God's power at work on Garo's end, doesn't that mean that a full power God should be able to time travel at will? And following that same line of logic, doesn't that mean that God could just turn back time the moment he's resurrected and stop people like Saitama and Blast from ever being born? All that being said, I for one generally think that using time travel to undo otherwise irreversible damage in a story is overall just kind of weak writing, don't you think? But one is not a weak writer, and this whole time travel thing didn't change that opinion for me in the slightest. A lot of One Punch Man fans tend to agree with me in that area. Many think that all of this really isn't as bad as you might think, and in fact was probably the only way weekly manga readers could have their their cake and eat it too. But what do I mean by that? Well, I'll tell me, and by extension you, what I mean by that. As I said at the top of the video, the climax of this arc was something that readers were frothing at the mouth to finally come after years of following Garo's insane glow up from a pissed off 18-year-old kid with some serious fighting skills to a straight up planetary threat. Along the way, Garo became something of a shadow protagonist in the story where readers were low-key rooting for him during every fight, even if that meant actively cheering for the villain. Garo is one's incredible character writing on full display, and his story had to conclude in the most epic way possible. Readers deserve that much after waiting for so long. It was pretty obvious one understood this because he took the original ending of the Monster Association arc from the webcomic, pumped it full of steroids, slapped it around a couple times, and had it chug a monster. Really, the moment God intervened was the true sign things were not going to be as we thought they were. And to be honest, I'm eternally grateful that one chose to do this. It allowed Garo to actually see his dream become a reality, which was something that wasn't the case in the webcomic. After receiving God's power, Garo succeeds in becoming the absolute evil he fought to be, and killed like 95% of all the important characters in the story without even touching them. Along with that, it allowed us to get one of the most iconic moments ever with the death of Genos. Being a weekly reader myself, watching Garo tear out Genos' core and smash his body to bits made me physically stand up as my jaw dropped, and although incredibly sad, it allowed us to witness a Saitama that we'd never seen before. A Saitama that was out for blood immediately and willing to take down the entire Earth with him in a fit of rage. That moment when Saitama went straight into a serious punch just to have Garo match it with his own was the moment that we as a fan base collectively said, let's go. It truly raised the stakes and emotions much higher than they really could have ever gone if one stuck with the original version. That's why when someone defends the time travel stuff with something like, well, how else were we supposed to get all those crazy plot twists and fights? I tend to agree with them. Sure, I wouldn't prefer it because of how it muddies the plot of the story, but then again, this is One Punch Man we're talking about. Yeah, it has a surprisingly robust world with complex storylines, but at the end of the day, it's still about a bald guy that's way too strong, right? One Punch Man is always been more focused on the development of individual characters and their journeys through a crazy world full of heroes and monsters, rather than worrying about taking itself too seriously. All that being said though, there are a few aspects of the time travel sequence I wish went a little differently, that honestly I think would have caused less discourse from readers. Let's go back to the moment Garo finally has a change of heart and puts the whole time travel plan into motion, but this time, instead of asking him to copy his most powerful technique, he asks him for help performing it himself by combining their power. See, in the manga, Garo claims that he can't pull off time travel himself, even though God's power allowed him to gain understanding of all phenomena in the universe. That's why he asked Saitama to copy his technique and do it himself. Well, what if instead of having Saitama somehow learn how to copy techniques perfectly all of a sudden, Garo simply asks Saitama to punch him? Sounds super random, but let me explain. Garo realizes that he's not powerful enough to produce the energy required to time travel, but knows that a combination of his and Saitama's power would be enough. This is when he comes up with the plan to begin the technique, then have Saitama hit him point blank with a serious punch to supercharge it in a sense. Saitama reluctantly agrees, and just before releasing the punch, Garo says his farewells knowing that the force from it would kill him and instantly destroy the planet along with him. Saitama releases the serious punch, completing the technique, and gets sent through the time tunnel that we see him enter in the manga. This way, we wouldn't be expected to believe that Saitama learned how to copy techniques on the fly, like in the original version of the manga, and it leaves room to speculate that only Saitama and God's combined power are necessary to time travel, which would explain why God hasn't done it himself already. That's one plot hole covered. On top of that, it adds a level of magnitude that wasn't really hammered home in the original version. I mean, you gotta remember, in the destroyed timeline, tons of people died and the entire Earth's population would have likely gone down with it, considering all the damage that Garo's radiation did to the planet itself. So everyone was gonna go down one way or another. In our new version, Saitama has to literally kill Garo and destroy the entire planet in order to fix everything. That's pretty freaking metal if you ask me. Well, as Saitama travels through this time tunnel, he finally has a moment of appreciation for martial arts like he does in the original manga version. I always thought this was an underrated moment because prior to this, it was made pretty clear from things like the Super Fight Tournament that Saitama saw no point in martial arts and saw it as a waste of time. The simple line when he says, I can't believe this. Your martial arts are awesome, Garo. Brings it all full circle. He finally sees the point in all these fancy spins and kicks. While traveling through the time tunnel, Saitama finds the moment Garo first appeared in front of all the heroes, and Zero punches him before any of the prior events happened. This time though, instead of having everyone's memories just get wiped, the timelines actually converge and everyone has a faint memory of the events that happened in the ruined timeline, almost feeling like it's a distant dream, with Garo and Saitama remembering everything. This way they both keep all the development their characters went through in that timeline. Now I know it's not the perfect ending, but you know, I did my best, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe if you enjoy One Punch Man content like this, because I post on this channel multiple times a week, all One Punch Man all the time, much like the video you see on your screen right now. So have a wonderful day, night, whatever, and I'll see you guys in the next video.